that was sung by Debbie Boone. And as I was preparing for it, when I read the gospel for today and I was preparing, the song kept popping in my head. So I Googled it and I found out who wrote it, and it was written by Carole King. And I wonder what Carole King was thinking, or what kind of state of mind she was in when she penned these words. Because it speaks about a very dark place, being in a very dark place, and having somebody come into her life and just lighten up her life, bringing life and vitality, drawing her out of that dark tomb, if you will, into a place where she speaks about, you lift up my life, you give me hope to carry on. You light up my days and fill my nights with a song. It just lifts her from that place. I wonder what frame of mind she was in when these words were inspired in her to pen them down. Because you see, I think on this Christian journey, this faith journey that we are on, we often are confronted with issues and concerns and challenges in our lives that often bring us into those dark places. And today's gospel is not one that, it's not one that's any different from any gospels that Jesus has taught. Remember that Jesus is still on the mountain. He's still up the mountain with his disciples. And we are in the midst of the Beatitudes. And this is the one place that everything that Jesus taught and did and said is encapsulated in 2 chapters of Matthew's Gospel, in the Beatitudes, 3 chapters, 5, 6, and 7. So he speaks about giving them new identity. Now, Christians have been called many names from the very beginning until now. But to be called salty people, salty Christians, light of the world, now that's a new one. Jesus is calling them to step outside those boxes that they have created for themselves and become who they were called to be. And when they become that salt and that light, they become like a city set up on a hill. Now, this imagery of a city set up on a hill is something that went into the very foundations of the forming of this great nation of ours. In the 1600s, the Puritans captured that image from scriptures and sort of appropriated to themselves as those who have been called by God and brought to this new promised land to live a life that is pleasing to God. They set themselves up to live by certain virtues, virtuous way of life. They have rules and regulations whereby people will have to live within certain parameters of the law in order to be identified as Christians. Now, whether or not the Puritan movement was successful is debatable, because we also know that part of that is when you break those laws, the punishment is pretty harsh. Some of which might just be isolation and ostracism. But we also know that the Salem witch hunt was part of all of that movement, where somehow certain people were targeted and killed because of who they were, that didn't fit into this defined mold. So we say that the movement, even though it has such high aspirations and such a profound vision, is questionable at best. The success of that movement is questionable at best. The vision is filled with high aspirations of a people desiring to please their Creator and thereby remain in the Creator's favor. Winthrop, the leader of the Puritans, Winthrop's vision was no different from the people of the ancient Israelites, who saw themselves as God's chosen people and given a land of milk and honey so that they may prosper. What is readily evident is in this story of the Israelites is how much they failed, how miserably they failed in pursuing this vision of being those called by God, chosen. The first reading we heard from the book of Isaiah introduces us to a nation restored by God after many years of of Babylonian exile. These people who have lived in Babylon for years and now were being brought back. And they were questioning why they felt abandoned by God. And they felt that as the chosen people, they followed the laws that were the Torah that was handed down by Yahweh through Moses. And they lived according to the Torah, and yet they felt abandoned by God. And they were asking all these questions, and the prophet says to them, you think God is pleased by all of that? Do you think that by killing goats and sheep and flogging yourselves and wearing sackcloth and ashes, is anything going to please God like that? And here's what Yahweh says to them according to the prophet. Yahweh said, is not this the fast that I choose? To loose the bonds of injustice? To undo the thong of the yoke? To let your oppressed go free? And to break every yoke? Is it not to share your bread with the hungry? And bring the homeless poor into your house? When you see the naked, to cover them? And not to hide your face from your own kin? Then your light shall break like a dawn. Then your light shall break forth like the dawn. It is through this way of life that Yahweh is instilling in his people, that their light, the word comes out again, light. Now, last week's sermon, I did say that the season of Epiphany, the season of light. It's when the ignorance of the world was illumined by the presence of Christ, the light of God, that comes into our dark places to light up our lives, to pull us out of our ignorance and out of our darkness into a place where God has called each and every one of us to be. God's inbreaking into our world is symbolized by the light of Christ, which dispels the darkness of our ignorance. The people of Israel failed to see that it is when they partner with God, that their light will break forth and the darkness around them will be dispelled. So there's a partnership, if you will. There's a partnership between Yahweh and his people, that Yahweh is busy trying to restore the world to a place that is pleasing to his sight. And these people are walking around as if, bragging about they're the chosen. Meanwhile, the hungry are going to bed hungry. The naked are walking around naked. The thirsty are not being given anything to drink. Children are being killed here and there. And all these things are happening, and yet they're just walking around thinking, we're the chosen. And perhaps this is what Jesus was trying to impart to his disciples. If you're going to be my disciples, then you've got to be the salt that you are. If you're going to follow me and carry my name, then you have to be who you are. Now I said, Christians have been given many names, but salty Christians? Now that's a new one. Salty Christians, that's what we are being called to be. Now, Jesus didn't say to the disciples, I'm thinking about making you the salt of the earth. Or, I'll try hard to make you the light of the world. No. You are the salt of the earth. You are the light of the world. Imagine that. Imagine that. That finally somebody is coming to you and say, this is who you are. It's what you are. It's not what you are going to be doing or being, but exactly who you are is the light and the salt of the earth. What does that mean? We're harking back to what Yahweh told his people in the book of in the prophet Isaiah's prophecy, that to fight injustice, to break the yoke that is binding people down, to the things in our world that is causing people to go into those places of darkness, that those who are the light of the world literally have to walk into people's lives and just lighten up their lives. Imagine that. Ordinary you, ordinary me, are being called to be the light and the salt. Now, remember that light and salt have no use, no purpose, except when it's enhancing something. What's the use of salt? salt except to bring out the taste in our food or to preserve our meat. Well, in ancient times, they used to use that also as a barter to trade with salt. But we're not in ancient times anymore. But salt has no use unless it's being applied to something. Light has no purpose, especially if you're going to put it on a bushel. Putting my light under a bushel is about walking around being a secret Christian. That when I'm on that bus ride and I see so much injustice being inflicted upon somebody, a child of God, that I'll just sit there, I'm a Christian, I'm just going to say a prayer for this person because I think that they're going through some hardship. That's putting my light under a bushel. The Christian is called to fight the injustice that is being inflicted on somebody else. So wherever injustice may be, we are called as a light and the salt to bring the best out of people. Can you imagine that? What better time to be salty Christians and lights of the world than now? In this season of Epiphany, where I said to you last week that God discloses God's self in so many strange ways. Where we least expect God to be, God pops up. Imagine that you are the one. You are the one chosen by God in that moment to bring light to somebody else's life. Imagine that you are the one chosen by God in that moment to bring the best out of people. Even those who are full of hate. Those who are so angry. Those who feel lost. The light can show somebody the path on which to follow. Salt can simply smile at somebody to bring the goodness out of them. Remember that we are children of God. We are created in that image. And we are innately good. That's who we are. We are innately good. I don't believe that people were created evil. Evil is part of our existence. And some of us, based on circumstances in our life, some people, based on circumstances in our life, become very evil. And think bad things, bad thoughts, negative things. But the role of the Christian in the life of such a person is to bring out that goodness. To bring it out. The salt brings out the taste. The light shows that there is a better way than that. This hatred, this anger is going to destroy you. So Jesus brings the disciples up the hill to show them an example of being people to be looked up to. Those who follow these tenets, these principles that he lays before them, those who claim their identity, the true identity that we were given, each of us, at that font, where we were anointed with the oil and marked and sealed as Christ's own forever, not just when we are in trouble, but forever. We are marked and sealed as Christ's own forever. We are the salt. We don't have to wait for some better salt to come around. We don't have to wait for some of the brighter light to come around. We are called to those places to bring the salt and the light to people who need it most. I think that's the purpose of coming to church, don't you? That we come to be inspired, to see that we can do better than we are doing. That we can be better Christians and not just Christians in secret. That the light that God has given to us is not somehow being put under a bushel, but rather put on a mantelpiece so that everyone can see where God is calling them to be. That we come in our brokenness, in our own brokenness, and a God who loves us no matter what baggage we bring, a God who says to us, the feast is ready, the table is set before you, come and be fed. Be fed so that you become bread for the world. Imagine that. And there's no better season for us to think on those things, of being the salt that we are and the light that we are for a world that is losing its taste. that has been overcome with darkness, than the season of Epiphany. It's my prayer that we each hear what the scriptures are calling us to be, our true selves, to lend a hand to those who are neediest among us. It is then that our lights will shine. Amen. Amen.